Today we're going to learn how to write linear equations when we are given the slope and y-intercept and when we are given a graph. Now that we've done graphing linear equations, we're going to do it kind of backwards now and figure out how to write equations. So when we graph, we use standard form and slope-intercept form. When we write linear equations, we always want our answer to be in slope-intercept form. Remember, that is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. Those two pieces of information, the slope and the y-intercept, that's what we need every single time to be able to write an equation. Sometimes we are given both things and that makes it pretty simple, but sometimes we have to find what those things are and it's a little bit more complicated. So starting with slope and y-intercept, like I said, it already gives us those two things. We can just write the equation y equals mx plus b, filling in the two blanks. So if our slope is 1/2 and our y-intercept is -3, we would write that as y equals 1/2 because that is the slope, which is m, x, and then plus b is -3. Whenever we have a negative y-intercept, I don't need to put plus a negative. Plus a negative is the same thing as just putting minus. It's okay if you put plus -3, but it's better if we just write minus. So the slope always goes in front of the x and the y-intercept goes after the x. Next example, slope equals 3/4 and y-intercept is 5. So we put the -3/4 before the x because that's our slope, and we put the plus 5 after the x because that's our y-intercept. Always mx plus b. These two are just a little bit different. We have a slope of 1 and a y-intercept of 0. So when our slope is 1, we would put 1x, but remember, we never see that 1. It's kind of like an imaginary 1. Whenever we have x, there's a 1 there. So we don't need to put the 1. If you do, it's not wrong. It's just better if we don't put the 1. And then same thing with plus 0. When we graphed, we don't see that plus 0. It's not needed. So we can just leave this as y equals x and know that the slope is 1 in front of the x and the y-intercept is 0. Now if we have a slope of 0, we would technically write that as y equals 0x and then minus 4. So our slope goes before the x and the y-intercept goes after. But when we graphed, we never saw 0x. Remember, 0, we don't see that. So it would just look like y equals -4. And if we remember, when we graph that, that is when we get our horizontal lines. Next, we're going to learn how to write an equation given a graph. So this is just completely backwards of what we just got done doing, where we had the equation and we graphed it. Now we have the graph and we need to write the equation. When we write the equation, we need to identify both the y-intercept and the slope. Like I said before, we always need those two pieces. And when we count slope, we want to start with the point on the left and count up for positive or down if it's negative, and always go to the right. We will always go to the right because we're starting on the left. So I like to put m equals and b equals. So we need to identify what our two pieces are before we can write the equation. Y-intercept is the easiest thing to find first. We look on the y-axis and I see this is our y-intercept. That is at 2. And then we start with the point on the left. Sometimes that will be your y-intercept and sometimes it won't. Start with the point on the left and count to the point on the right. In this case, we need to go down 2, over 1, 2, 3, 4. Since we went down, that means it will be a -2. And then we went to the right 4. We always want to simplify our fractions. So I see -2/4. We can simplify that to -1/2 if we divide both the top and the bottom by 2. So we're going to use -1/2 for our m. I didn't have much space there. And our equation would be y equals -1/2 x, because we put the slope first, plus 2. Once we have these two pieces, then it's the exact same as how we did this. Put the slope before the x and the y-intercept after. So -1/2 x plus 2. Next equation. Start by finding the y-intercept. Look on the y-axis. Again, it's at 2. And then we count our slope. There's a bunch of points here. Remember, it does not matter which point you start with as long as you start on the left and count to the right. So I can't start with this one because there's nothing else on the right, but I could start with any of the other ones starting on the left and counting to the right. I find it easiest just to start from our y-intercept. That's how we would graph it. So I start from our y-intercept, we go up 1 over 1. So our slope is 1 over 1. We can just write that as 1. So then when we write our equation, we put y equals, the slope goes before the x, so it would be 1x, but remember we don't need to write a 1, it's like imaginary. So y equals x plus 2. Our y-intercept is 2. Now the next two, they are not on your notes, but I wanted to go through them as examples. So this graph, the y-intercept is at 5, and the slope, if we make another point, is up 0 over 1. Well, 0 on the top of a fraction always gives us an answer of 0. So the slope, we remember, a slope of a horizontal line is 0. So our equation would be that y equals 0x that we don't see plus 5. So we just see y equals 5 when the slope is 0. And then this one is an extra special one because it doesn't have a y-intercept. So it's not going to be y equals. It doesn't touch the y-axis. We look at the x-axis and x equals 3. So this is literally just x equals 3. Whatever is on the x-axis where the line touches, that is what x equals. It's a vertical line, so it's undefined slope. That gives us that special equation, x equals